Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember McCune, I saw her. Councilmember Nyhan,
Here.
Present.
and who am I missing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's it.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Ms. Clark, seconded by Katie Dodwell. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, voice vote, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Councilmember Bope, are you opposed to the minutes? It came in a little late.
Just a little late.
Just a little late. That's what I thought. So I wanted to clarify. Any abstain? Okay, so unanimously we approved the minutes. Do we have anyone here from the public?
There are no members of the public on the meeting tonight.
Okay, rolling right along. Under discussion items ready for action, we're going to touch again on what we talked about last week with continual review of development goals and objectives. Julian, would you like to start us off with anything?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. At last month's meeting, we provided a list of working goals for the city's economic development program for 2020 and 2021. We had provided a set of documents, including the master plan, most recently amended in 2016, the city's economic development guide, which was developed by the city in 2016, and then the most recent set of 5-year goals and objectives by the city council from 2015 to 2019. Using those documents, we prepared just a list of working goals for this program for this year, using bits and pieces pulled from each of those documents, just so that we as team members know what to focus on, what our priorities are for the year as a sort of work program. That list was provided to the committee for its information at the last meeting. There was discussion by the committee to review it additionally, potentially add items or edit items. I know Chair Edens has a few items that she would like to review and gauge the committee's interest in adding to the city's program for this year. One item that she recommended we add to the list, which is on page 1 of the memo provided as number 7, shown in red, identifies that we should support the extension of high-speed internet to the city's rural areas, primarily during COVID-19, so that our residents can successfully work from home during the pandemic. The request and the action taken by the committee in July was to postpone any further discussion until this month to give everybody ample time to review the goals and identify if there are any additional changes or edits desired to this document. With that being said, Chair Eden's happy to answer any questions.
Would anyone like to comment or make a motion? Councilmember Dodwell.
I just wanted to make mention that we may be adding some additional things as we go through our 2021 planning cycle. And so everybody needs to keep an open mind as we do that, and think about if there's additional resources we need to add to any of our programs, or additional activities that we need to be involved in. We definitely need to get them on this list so that they get in front of us during budget time. So if there's anything that anybody wants to add, please do so.
I certainly know, and then I've got you, Councilmember Clark, next. At the council meeting, there was mention of expanding Winterfest into a sort of a nighttime marketplace. I think that Planning and Parks took that up, so that could be, that's probably just covered by the phrase Winterfest, but certainly we would need to think about other resources expanding that. Councilmember Clark?
I just have a procedural a question. When you have all of these different items on here, how is it that we help you? How do we get together and discuss each one of these, and what are the steps involved and help with that, or how do we help?
Councilmember Clark, we provided this list of working goals to this committee just as more of a update of the work that the committee had done for 2020 to date, just to show some of the priorities that we've been working on this year, mainly business retention, business expansion, and business recruitment, but also some of those other items of special event programming, like Chair Edens mentioned, the high-speed internet item. This is mainly a document that we look at each year just to identify what our focus areas are for that next year. Because there are a number of new faces on this committee and on the council, at that last meeting in July, we wanted to provide this list to you all so you have a good idea of what our main focus areas are for 2020, but also give each of you that are new the opportunity to review it and make any changes. Usually it's a part of the calendar year. When we get to the end of 2020, we'll look at a list for potential ideas for 2021. But as I mentioned, because there's a fair number of new faces on this group, we want to give you all the opportunity to do so.
And I will add off of that too, to answer one of your questions too, is when new ideas come about and we decide that we want to take it up as work on the committee, if it's something that's your idea, one of the things the committee can do is deputize you to work with Julian and the chair to help plan your idea and see it come to fruition. That's what happened last cycle with myself and with Katie Dodwell when she was chair, and we met with Julian and the WBA and all sorts of business partners to make sure that the work could get done, and then would bring it back to the committee. So certainly there's things listed on here, and there's opportunities for breakout sessions as we add to the workload. And sorry to interrupt you. I'm just trying to answer your question. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And thank you so much, both of you, for that clarification, because I just want to know if there's something I should be doing to help you with this list. And you're just, what you're saying is just look at it and see if there's anything more I want to add, or one of the, something that I can help on, right? Not help develop it at this point. It's already built. Okay.
Unless you have a great idea for development, then you want to share that, you're welcome to it certainly at any time.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to comment or add something to the list? If you are interested in adding a statement in support of rural internet, I think we do need a motion, I believe, to add that. If I remember right, we did not have that last time. Councilmember Bertolino?
Yeah, Julian, how do you envision economic development support? The term used is support the extension of. What actual activities do you see this committee doing that isn't already being done by either the council as a whole or the rural internet access?
Councilmember Bertolino, I believe that the council as a whole and the Rural Internet Access Committee have a really good grip on it. I think our approach can be to represent the employers and the employees of the city, more so focusing on the workforce than just the resident aspect, especially given the impacts of COVID and the volume of people working from home and needing high-speed internet to do their jobs, to successfully keep their jobs and perform well in their jobs. There's an added focus on internet during this time. Also, I believe there are certain resources available within the economic development spectrum that can support the work done by the council and by the Rural Internet Access Committee. Namely, there are certain grants available made by the state, by the Department of Economic Development each year that allow for certain amounts of funding to go towards broadband development throughout the state. It's never a lot of money, but we're always in direct communication with state representatives, the director of broadband for the Missouri Department of Economic Development, and others that do make those funds available to cities and providers throughout the state. So helping provide those resources to the Department of Planning, to the Rural Internet Access Committee, and to the council. Also working with some of the utility providers that we're in contact with. We worked with Ameren, Missouri a couple of years ago on a recent legislation that was approved where Ameren started launching new fiber internet expansion throughout their utility network, namely so that Ameren could benefit from smart meters and smart data, but also so that cities could also benefit from that extension of the high speed at the same time. So not taking anything away from the existing work being done, trying to add our support and add our help in any way possible.
Lauren, if I may.
Yes.
Follow up. Thanks, Julian. The thought occurred to me that at least in the interim, in this gap period where we don't have internet access in so many places, is it even feasible that the city would entertain developing its own hotspots and making those free and available to students and or home business owners, throughout the day. And I'm thinking we have the Miller House is no longer in business. And would that be a good spot if the city, on a temporary basis, say for the next 6 months, set up its own hotspot, made it free to our citizens, and as again, just a service to them? Is that even feasible or even necessary?
I think we can certainly have the conversation, talk to our city administrator and director of planning about it as an option. I'm curious of what the cost impacts are of potentially leasing that space or setting up the internet access for that space. Also making sure that it's staffed and managed properly, especially during the time of restrictions and regulations by St. Louis County for COVID. We want to make sure that there aren't any issues with capacity or distancing or sanitizing. So opening up the Miller House as an option, we just need to make sure it's done properly so that we're not liable for anything.
And one of the things is I do know Rockwood and Parkway school districts did have money from the county, and we're hoping to extend hotspots as well. And I'm not sure where that progress is. And the other thing that we could do as well, and Julie and I talked about this, if the rural internet committee would need to see supporting data about the importance that this plays when employers choose to locate to an area, or for employee retention. There are certainly national studies that show how important internet access is to employing or staying employed. Councilmember Dodwell.
Sorry, I'm not fast enough on the draw. I was going to ask the question, if we're dealing with assistance of students, is it possible to put a hotspot in the community room in City Hall that would allow for an easier review and overseeing of the use of any kind of internet connections, and also how they would treat the building, the facility itself? I know that's not a whole lot of room in that particular space, but I didn't know if we had any desire to do anything like that during the daytime hours from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. or something. But I don't know how many meetings go on in that particular space during the day. It seems a little quieter during the day.
You're fine, go ahead.
I was just going to say that might be more in the jurisdiction of the Internet Access Committee, since it's education based and not strictly
I know.
economic development. But these things do go together.
It does bring people
shaping the next workforce. I would just say that we would really need to heavily communicate with them. So I want to go back to Councilmember McCune.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So I can confirm on the hotspot conversation with Rockwood, particularly, that every single student that needed a hotspot was given one throughout the district. And it's been very successful because we experienced that as well. And it was for taxpayer money, a grant from St. Louis County. So I think us offering a hotspot for students connectivity, I think that a lot of that is restricted due to the access points of what they can and cannot access at different levels of the school district. So I think that I like the hotspot idea, but I don't think it's going to be really well received from the school, since they are already receiving them and they're in their own homes. So I'd like to expand it for other reasons where people don't have internet, but I just don't want to focus on the students because they already have their equipment.
Excellent points, and thank you for the update and speaking from the point of view as a parent. Anyone else? Julian?
Yeah, just one additional thought. Even though the Miller House closed because of COVID, there's still one additional active shared use workspace business located in Town Center, Wildwood Workspaces. It's owned by Kevin Gross-Nicholas, who owns Architect Now. They're in the second floor of the tower above Milk and Honey and Benedetto's. They opened last year about 2,500 square feet of open co-working space that is available by registration for either a private reserved desk or an open seat at a larger space. I don't know if it's appropriate for students as much as it is for people that are struggling to work from home with internet access. Obviously, COVID has made a pretty big impact on our financing for the city. But if we wanted to offer a hotspot of sorts, a partnership with that business could be available to offer that at a discounted rate or some sort of lower cost to the owner, where we partner with the business owner to offer that.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Or could we just publicize that that facility is available as an economic incentive for that business if they have space available that they are willing to rent, since the other location is no longer available? They may get 4 or 5 additional, 6 or 7 additional tenants in their space. So I don't know how we would go about publishing that other than on our website.
We can easily put it in our social media, the weekly e-newsletter, and on our website. We do that frequently with special events that business owners are involved in.
Okay. I'd just like to promote the business that is having success right now.
Councilmember McCune.
I just want to say that's an excellent idea. I had no idea that existed, Julian. And I think that, yeah, publicizing that, Katie, I think that's brilliant, because we do hear of people working from home and can't access the internet, and it just gives them that open space. So applaud to that. I really would like to push that out and see what kind of interest we get. So do we need to make a motion, or how does that work in this committee to have you outreach to see if maybe we can say that we're going to sponsor them in the highlight, or do we need to do anything, Julian?
I think what we can do is add it to the work list, and since that's the consensus of the committee and without objection is to include that as part of the, quote, support for internet, then we can have Julian begin that outreach.
Yes, I'd like to see that.
Okay, so are you making the motion?
Yes, if you need a motion, I will definitely make that motion so it gets added and we can kind of push this through.
Okay, perfect. So if you're okay with the language in your motion, then we'll just use the language on number 7, which is in red, and I'll read it to you because I know you're on the road. Support the extension of high-speed internet to the city's rural areas to better allow for city residents to be able to successfully work from home, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. We could say extension and access to. Access to implying that you can go somewhere else rather than just extend it to your home, if you would like.
Yeah, I think that suits this. Yes.
Okay, so
I would agree.
Carla, do you have all that?
I do.
Okay, perfect. So now we need a second. Councilmember Jelani has his hand up in the feature.
That's
so
fine.
Are you speaking on the motion, or?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment regarding to what Julian had brought up, what was talking about.
Okay, so let me get a second first. So the motion's on the floor. So is that a second by Councilmember Dodwell?
Yes.
Now we'll go back to you.
Okay, so Julian, we were talking about that business over there in the co-working space. You said they have 2,500 square feet. Do you know how many folks, based on the COVID conditions and the space build out they have, that how many people they could accommodate? If I'm just thinking of if we publicize this and a lot of people take advantage as a viable option for their work to get in areas where they can't access internet, and which would be great if he could get really busy and make a lot of business off of it too. Is there an opportunity for him to access additional space in that building or in another building in Wildwood that he could potentially rent on a short-term basis to accommodate as many people as would need, just in case it becomes more overwhelming, which would be good?
There is. So his business, Wildwood Workspaces, that he opened last year has probably, I'm estimating here, but about 15 to 20 reserved desks, and then an additional large table for unreserved space just for open shared work. So I'd say all in, there's probably room for about 40 people in that space. With COVID, with distancing and restrictions, obviously not everybody's going to be able to fit in there. I think it maybe at most we might see a quarter of that. I'd say 10 to 15 if we're lucky. The space is larger, but the desks are very clustered together and they're all on attached tables. So it's hard to separate people beyond what's already in place. Kevin, the owner, did a fair amount of marketing up front, but during COVID put a lot of it on hold. As of this point, he has about 5 or 6 people working in there. So I'd say today he could probably add another 10 comfortable and still be able to follow all the county regulations. Wildwood Workspaces is his second business. He opened that just as an add-on to his existing full daytime job. He owns Architect Now, which is a software developer down the hallway. They're in the octagon space immediately above Milk and Honey, and they have another 2,000 to 3,000 square feet of their office space there. But because of the nature of their work doing web development and virtual programming, they've been 100% remote since March. So nobody is in their office space today at all. So that could open up the opportunity between Wildwood Workspaces and their current office space at Architect Now to allow for additional people if and when there is a demand.
And does he do, is it co-working space that's paid by the month, like on a month to month, or is it daily? Can you do it shorter term, or is it you have to commit?
He's currently month to month. That was set up before COVID. I'm sure he'd be open to the idea of modifying that given the current demand and people needing a space to work for a day or a week instead of a full month. The entire business is set up digitally. You have access to a mobile application on your phone that grants you access to the door, and you're allowed inside without needing a key or anything more traditional. So as long as you are willing to pay a certain fee for access, you can go in and work at your leisure, either with your own reserved desk or an open space, whatever works better for you.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that, especially with that mobile app, maybe in this and other environment, if the city's going to help promote the business and offer it as a service for residents, perhaps he could do something where people even pay by, you buy a block of hours, like I buy 10 hours, and then I can use that 10 hours whenever I want. And so he gets a fee per hour. And if you buy more hours, you get a discounted rate or whatnot. It could be a good business model for him to generate, for folks that might need to go in for a few hours at different times. And then via the app, they could, be able to access that, and he could earn money for that, even from short-term users.
We can definitely talk to him about it.
That's a very good point. And Julian, when you're reaching out, one idea would be to go back to the Rural Internet Access Committee, because they have had a list of people that have publicly commented that they cannot work from home. And those 10 spots might even get filled up just by reaching out to people that have already come to complain. And then we could, continue to do a drive so that if people are aware as new spots become available, hopefully when the internet does come to a home for them. But that would be an easy place to start.
And I can say, even without needing fiber at that location, he has gig internet down. Just on basic spectrum, high business package, he is 1,000 megabytes down every day. So there's more than enough room for people to work there.
Okay, any other comments about the list that you were presented? Anything else you'd like to add before we move on? Okay, if seeing none, then let's go on to the next ready for action.
We have a vote.
Yes, we do need to vote. Thank you so much. We had Council Member McCune made a motion. Council Member Dodwell seconded it. Let's start with a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, thank you. Excellent catch. I really appreciate that. All right, so I prepared part of the next attachment that you were given. And basically, it just came about with a conversation with a couple of vendors at Celebrate Wildwood. And we have lots of information already available to individuals that want to maybe come enjoy our trails, people who want to perhaps stay at the hotel and look at a restaurant. Some of that's available already through Googling. But what I heard was I need it in one place and I need it in front of my face. And I would have loved to have had information about the history of Wildwood. And I want to know what to do while I'm here. So there are a lot of cities, do I think we're going to get people to drive 5 hours, come spend the night? Maybe, probably not, but plenty of cities have either their own website or their own page on a website dedicated to visiting or tourism, and taking all of that information that's spread out, like the parks and trails, like the history of the city, and putting it onto one easily navigable page. What I also heard from this vendor was if it can be printed out, great. If it can be emailed, even better. So I just wanted to kind of throw this out there as a future work project. Julian will tell you about the attachments he included, and if there's any ideas or if you would like to take this up as a work program, we can do so. So Julian, would you like to add to that?
Sure, thank you. And in addition to the memo that Chair Edens provided, just because the topic of discussion was on marketing materials for the city, I wanted the committee, especially the new faces, to just have an idea of some of the materials that were developed previously in the last 4 or 5 years. The first item, which was just called the marketing brochure, was something that was developed by our marketing and PR firm shortly after I came on board almost 4 years ago, just as a printed piece that I mainly could take into meetings with retailers and developers that didn't know too much about Wildwood, to give them a better idea about our community, some photos, some statistics, some maps, just to give a better idea of who Wildwood is, where we are, and what we're about. It wasn't meant to be comprehensive. It was meant to be an easy, brief piece that just shows some basic information about Wildwood. It does include a very, very brief high-level summary of the history of the city, some of our awards and recognitions, what we were best known for when the document was created 3 or 4 years ago, and then some basic statistics on community attributes, population, household income, home prices, sales tax rates, and so on. Just to try and promote the city to those that maybe don't know much about the community. We haven't updated that document in about 3 years, so don't be surprised if some of the data is a little bit out of date. That was just the last time that former marketing and PR firm that we utilized back in 2016 updated the document for us. The other item is newer. Hopefully you all have seen it in different places over the years. We've updated it twice now. It's the visitor's guide. That was intended to provide really 2 pieces of information. The first part is a new document that we never really had before for the city, which was a town center shopping map to show many of the shops and restaurants and attractions that are available in town center. So if somebody is new to the community or staying at the hotel or visiting City Hall and is wondering about restaurants or shops or attractions in the community, that shopping map shows them those major attractions for town center. And it is specific to town center. That's our destination of sorts. So it's meant to really focus on the shopping areas of town. And then the other piece is within that same document, when you open up the full-size visitor's guide, there is a large trail guide that identifies a detailed level of information for the city's parks and trails, recommended routes, difficulty ratings, types of surface, some other attractions available throughout the city and for the city as a whole, so that you can take that document with you out on the trails, anywhere you go in the community, and have information available for both parks, trails, and shopping. We do have that document updated pretty regularly. The last time was at the end of last year. Obviously, certain changes occur with different businesses that open and close, so we will continue to make updates to that. Neither of those were directly created for tourism as an idea, as Chair Edens had mentioned. They both kind of dance around that idea, but neither are specifically driven to be tourism pieces. But I wanted to make sure the committee had seen both of those documents for use in the discussion.
Councilmember Clark.
I love that you have all of those things together to give to people coming into the city, because it's always difficult when you come to a new city to know what does my city have and how do I find out? And I don't even know that there's a website to look at the website. And then what I'm looking at it like I'm a new council person and I am finding out almost daily something new that's on the website because I didn't even know what to look for. And all of a sudden I find something and I'm like, wow, there's that information that I was trying to find. And so I would ask that we can extend this to not just the residents, but for the council members to have something that we can, not with all the information in it, but at least something that says, here's where you find the information. And so it's it helps us to be able to tell the residents in our wards the information without having to go and try to find it and spending a lot of extra time. We have it right there. Who do we contact for this? How do we find out about the history of this area? Where do we go to find this information?
So you're thinking, having it in one website, tab.
Yeah.
Visit Wildwood rather than, and that is essentially what happened in my conversation. Well, we have all of these great, history banners and stuff on our website, but they didn't know to go look at the Historic Preservation Commission's page. So, and
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm thinking in my head, not even website, I'm thinking of a little book, but I guess the website is the way that we do things now. So just something that we can, even if we had it in a little book that we could have with us all the time, that we didn't have to go and find the website. We could just look at it and say, okay, I know who to go to. I know I can be out on the trail and somebody call me, I know who to go to. I can be someplace without internet, like my house right now. I had to find a place that I could get connection because I live in the woods. And so sometimes I don't have connection to look at the website. So yeah, just something that would give new council people, especially because I'm just finding out little bits here and a little bits there because there was no reason for me to ask before.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Julian, I just wanted to double check. These two documents that you've already gone over, those are in the welcome packet that goes to new residents, are they not?
The visitor's guide is, yes. The
Yeah.
kind of trifold document with the maps is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that for that new resident welcome packet that goes out to about 100 households every month, we're never guaranteed where these people might be moving from if they're new to Wildwood or new to St. Louis. And since we did design this document and printed off enough of them, we send out a visitor's guide with every welcome packet that goes out in the mail each month. So every new resident that gets your name as council member also has a copy of this visitor's guide in that same packet.
Essentially, it would be nice if we had, people that came in and they thought they were just going to come for one event and we snagged them. And so while they were here, maybe they extend their stay so they can go on the trails and then go get ice cream at the wonderful new Main Street Creamery and maybe stop by Milk and Honey or Heels or another shop at the same time because they know it exists ahead of time to plan for that. Councilmember Dodwell and then Councilmember Clark.
Lauren, how are you thinking about communicating that? I read through part of your memo a couple of days ago, but I don't remember all the details, sorry. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to understand what difference are we going to make in how we communicate that information to potential visitors here?
Right, so I think we do need something printed, but we don't have a lot of money and it has to be easily updated as businesses open and close. We have a new park that's going to be open, but isn't yet. So that would be an example of something that would need to be updated had it already been printed. If we dedicate even a new website that's glossy or a web page, we can do, live, so activities, focus on upcoming events that may not get printed all the time because they change or they get canceled, like Winterfest. The WBA has some great spotlights, but if you don't know to look at that Facebook page, you're not going to know about it. We could even do local videos and features and interviews of business owners. We could do a list of common things to visit while you're here. We could do a plug for horse community events. So something that is continually updated and is exciting enough to revisit the page. And, you know, we could even have just a simple banner at perhaps the hotel or bigger restaurants that says, visit wildwoodtourism.com. And it just constantly redirects people to that same area.
Okay, now I understand what you're talking about.
And then maybe something to click on, or a short paragraph, learn about the history of Wildwood. So we add that little memo of history, because there's a driving tour that you can take of all the historic areas.
Mhm.
But if you don't know to look at the history commission's website, that's still something that's not mentioned in that little blurb that we already have printed off in our brochure.
So you're talking about you're talking about consolidating on a separate website a visitors a tourism website that will provide those pieces of information. Okay.
Yes, and we have a very small, close-knit business community, the way I see it. So certainly, you know, we don't want to become a total advertising agency, but we work with these businesses. We work with the WBA, so we can promote certain things that go on in our community. So we'd love you to maybe come for a live music at this business location, and we'd love you to go to dinner maybe first at another area, or, you know, plan an entire weekend where you do something else first. So I've heard a lot. I didn't know this was here. I didn't know this was here. I didn't know this was here. So, and, you know, really, this is an extremely low cost item, if not no fiscal note. So it's can't do harm.
And Cherry, and I'll add on to that, just that, and we talked about this beforehand, that nobody's trying to recreate the wheel here. I think we can easily find best practices in other communities that we can use as a template, create our document using those as a prime example. That'll allow us to do it in-house at little to no cost, and make regular updates to the document instead of outsourcing it to some kind of paid consultant.
Mm-hmm. And we do have a lot of photo content for a variety of events that we've had been holding here in the town center, so and across the community, so that we can show them some of the horsing activities that we do, as well as some of the skiing activities that we do, and yada yada yada.
This is certainly a way to plug any of our programs again. You know, if the
I guess my final question is, Julian, who's going to be in charge of placing the content and updating it on a routine basis?
Well, Sam's not here, so he can fall on that grenade for me.
Oh, okay, good.
We'll work it out between our team here, some kind of divide and conquer, figure out who's the best option for that.
Councilmember Clark, is that a hand? Yep.
Yes, you know, I think the website is great source, but I think it's always best if we can tell somebody. So yeah, with the COVID, we can't, you know, be close together, but I think we can still visit some of the people and stay far away. And I just think delivering these new resident packets by the members of the commission and the council people of the ward would be a great way to introduce people and tell them in person, to say, look at the website, there's so much there. Because telling somebody that is so much better than them trying to read it and say, oh, well, where do I find it? And I have to read through to find, you know, there's a website, then I go look at it. If I just say, there's a website, and here it is, and you can find everything you want on there, and call me if you can't find it, and I'll help you. I just think that support, plus it would save us, what, $10 a packet, send an amount.
About 7.5, yeah.
Well, there is a lot more information though in that packet than just the website. So businesses submit things that they want new residents to see. I think sometimes they even include coupons. So there's a lot more in that physically I think needs to be handed to the residents. Now, you can choose whether or not you want to go visit those residents yourself. Certainly on your own time. You could maybe also work with Julian on that as well. When you get the new resident list. So I would say that nothing keeping us from all having conversations on our own with our new resident constituents. But I have seen the packet. It is really neat and quite thorough. So I would encourage you to look at it. But it does have a lot more in it that can just be verbally communicated. Anyone else? Or would anyone like to make a motion to start working on promotional material and a website? Councilmember Galani, do you have specific wording or is that? Okay.
I go with what you say.
Okay.
You word it perfectly.
So proceed as recommended by the committee for preparation of tourism materials and a tourism dedicated web page or website. Okay, can we get a second? Seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. We might be the least argumentative committee.
Most
You're
fun.
good. Okay.
If I may, Lauren, as a
Yes.
point of interest, and Julian will back this up, and so will Katie. These materials that he just presented, the tourism, the marketing brochure and the visitor's guide, it was like the Civil War, right, guys? To get this done back 4 or 5 years ago was, I mean, we had to have public hearings. We got, I don't know, raked through over the coals. And it was not pretty. So I'm just thrilled that the change in attitude and the change in the structure of our membership of our council, that this is being so actively pursued now, because it was a difficult birthing process, and thanks to Julian, it was successful.
My goodness. Well, thanks for laying the path before. I have to tell you, I've given out those brochures myself. And I have heard nothing but, oh, this is great. I appreciate the trail map. Oh, finally a list of businesses. So they're certainly used. So, all right, well, let's move on to the next item for action. So once again, I wrote a memo and so did Julian, and some background on how my wheels got turning on this. And I've certainly had this conversation with Dave as well. Some is well, actually, let me back up and first say we do have a veteran on the committee, a very special former general, and I'm so excited he's on this call. So thank you for your service, John. But I went to a veterans mental health seminar first that was held at Manchester United Methodist. And what I learned at that event is that communication of resources and building of a community among veterans is incredibly important. Because of the success of that event and feedback, the city of Manchester sponsored an event also held at the same place. The city of Manchester decided to form a commission or committee as well for Veterans Affairs. And what I heard at this resource fair, so this is, a lot of it was economic based. I would say most of it was geared towards professionals. So not necessarily a veteran that is very down on his luck or her luck. And I heard a couple of things. I heard it was really hard to get a hold of all of the resources available because they are not uniformly compartmentalized, right? There may be county resources, there's USDA resources for business money. If you don't know that the University of Missouri holds a business entrepreneurship boot camp, you can't attend it. You just have to know where these resources are. So what I heard was that there might be a need in the local community to have that available in one place. When you have an opportunity to create, another web page that corrals all of these economic programs so that folks can apply for them, it's also a great opportunity to provide a list of additional resources. You don't want to lose the opportunity to provide mental health resource information, I think, at the same time, because I feel very strongly that that's a service that we can offer to the community. But again, this is the Economic Development Committee. It does need to be economic based. Certainly there's opportunities for partnerships with other nonprofits for events or offering resource fairs. There are national recruiting programs that we can join and certainly have a table at. But one very easy, cheap thing that we could also do would be to create some sort of recognition for veteran-owned businesses in Wildwood, or businesses that employ veterans. And we can keep a list of that on the website as well. We also have a lot of businesses in the community that offer discounts to the veterans. One example is the YMCA, which offers a deep discount for membership to not only veterans and active duty members, but their families as well. But you have to know about that as well. So all of these, I think, are important services, but also we can do this in a very cheap way as well. So I just wanted some feedback and on your thoughts on this. And I did try to list examples of economic programs that we could put on our website and put links up to. So we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. We're just making sure all the spokes are on the same wheel. Councilmember Dodwell.
Is it possible for us to send out a call for information from all of the businesses in Wildwood to ask, are they a veteran-owned business? Do they want to participate in this as part of their marketing strategy? And then what would they like us to say? And that would minimize the amount of legwork. I don't know, Julian, would it be better to go door to door and talk to all of these locations? Or do we already know who is a veteran-owned business or not?
We do not, to my knowledge. We could easily perform outreach to all the business owners directly, probably via one of two methods. I send usually weekly emails to every business owner that we have contact information for in Wildwood, just with, especially during COVID for the last 5+ months, with weekly updates of whatever changes based off regulations, restrictions, updates by the state, the county, SBA funding, whatever. So I could easily include this as a part of that. I would definitely want to give it its own opportunity to shine, where maybe instead of just including it in a larger update, we can do a little bit more direct outreach for this specific request. Not every business owner turns in an email address as part of their business license, so we might have better luck if we do this as more of a mailing instead of an email, where we send a city letterhead email to, or a city letterhead mail to every business in Wildwood, just asking them for their information. Are you a veteran-owned business? Do you employ veterans? Would you be interested in better showcasing your veteran participation and involvement as a business community? And giving them an option to respond to us directly, whether by email or respond mail. That might get a little bit better response than just including it in a weekly email to the business owners after them receiving way too many enough for me as is.
Yeah, I concur. I just wanted to understand if you guys had discussed methodology to reach out to these veteran business.
I see Councilmember McCune. Councilmember Bertolino was first, and then we'll go to McCune.
I don't know if this is totally appropriate or not as a venue, if you call it that. But and Julie, I like your idea of sending the letters to the veterans business, and maybe there's a link here. I'm very active with the St. Louis Greater St. Louis Honor Flight. which takes veterans to, especially World War II Korean and now Vietnam veterans, to DC for a one-day tour of their memorials and so on. It's a wonderful event. You've probably seen it in the paper and so on. We are constantly looking for veterans, primarily, again, the older veterans, the World War II Korean and so on. We have not taken that trip to sign up, and it's free to them and so on. I'm just throwing that out, Julian, if that is something that we can tag onto in some way, having the veteran-owned businesses here help us in some way get the word out to a veteran that doesn't know about Greater St. Louis Honor Flight, or heard about it but just never really took the initiative to go to do it. I'm just throwing it out as perhaps a link, something that would give an activity, if you will, to some of the veteran-owned businesses and so on that they might want to get involved in. That was it.
I think once we establish connections, there's nothing wrong with helping to facilitate networking and making others aware of other groups that exist that can benefit veterans.
Yeah.
Councilmember McCune.
So I like the mailing aspect. I just want to know what additional costs we're going to have by postage and, the paper and stuff. Are we going to expend a lot of money for that?
So we have a list of 250 storefront businesses in Wildwood. That includes commercial, medical, institutional, and so on. At about 50 cents a pop, that's about $125 for postage. Paper, that's 250 pieces of paper. That cost is relatively minimal. The only thing I'm thinking of is, and one of the proposal options that Chair Edens mentioned was if we want to provide some kind of sticker or laminated window cling that identifies to the public that veterans work here, or this is a veteran-owned business, there would be additional cost if we were to develop those kinds of stickers or clings. Again, it's nominal, but definitely worth considering. For the mailings, though, it's relatively minimal cost.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to get the idea of how many businesses we had and what impact that would be. So thank you.
I appreciate it. I hadn't thought of mailers, so this was a good idea. And if I know that this is a penny pinching year, so even if we had to start with a piece of paper laminated that we printed ourselves and budget for clings or something nicer next year, we could certainly do that. And if there's a way to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row so that we could already include other things in that mailer where we're asking them if they're veteran owned or veteran employed, we're going to kill a lot more birds with one stone. In other words, as we develop a list of economic development programs that are open to veterans, I would think we would want to include that in the initial letter and point them to a website page if we can get one up and running. Julian.
Just one thought. Obviously, COVID and 2020 are not anything that we're used to, and I think our programming this year looks a lot different than we had planned for last year. I'm pretty positive that we probably won't be seeing any kind of traditional snowman search or something similar to that this winter. Only reason I bring that up is developing a web page is free and relatively easy just to identify some resources. Maybe we target the mailer to be around November for Veterans Day.
Yes.
That way we're keeping it focused and we're sending out a letter to the business owners, which we were going to do anyway for Snowman Search. We can just replace that with the Veterans Mailer instead leading into November. So while we can create the webpage before then, the request, the invite to the business owners can be more targeted around Veterans Day and trying to showcase businesses that have veteran involvement.
Oh yes. And speaking of businesses, I have a very good friend that is a veteran from Wildwood. And before all of the new folks were on, we had a meeting where the equine assisted therapy came and spoke, and they had a flyer with them for a Veterans Day where veterans could come and pet the horses and help clean out the area and ride them. And I took a copy to my friend, and he said, I can do this. And I said, yes, you can. And unfortunately, the date didn't work out, but the joy I thought on his face was pretty neat. And so that again reinforced that there are businesses already doing this and providing some neat opportunities in Wildwood, but it goes back to people have to know about them. Councilmember Dodwell. Oh, she's on mute.
On mute. Do we need a motion to go forward with preparing a letter for review by the committee and mailing before Thanksgiving would be nice, because Veterans Day is shortly after Thanksgiving. And then that way they can enjoy their holiday with their family, knowing that people are thinking of them.
I think so, and if you're comfortable, if you're making the motion with including the website, so that would be, you know, listed in mailers, I think that would be good.
You can include a web page, not a website, a web page.
Yeah, is that a second?
Oh, I just had a question.
Absolutely.
Or I guess a suggestion for, and this would be down the road, but just as you're talking about reaching out to the veteran community in Wildwood, then I'm thinking the community outreach committee, you know, that might be something at some point down the road to incorporate, because they're part of the community and maybe a sector, you know, to focus on or get involved or see events and what other institutions in Wildwood are offering for them, that we could maybe at some point, you know, team that all together, which I realize is down the road.
Perfect. Great idea. Well, let's try to build something for him, and we'll maybe hand them the reins on part of that. So do we have a second on the floor? Seconded by Councilmember McCune. Let's do a voice vote again, since we're pretty agreeable tonight. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, all right, well, moving along. Okay, we are on to the economic so there's a kind of a generic thing on here, just with some other business and event ideas. One of the things that we talked about last year, but we ran out of money for, and it did get approved by the committee, it just didn't end up happening, is when we did the WBA event. One of the things on the list was to have, and this is something that St. Charles did, and that's where I copied the idea from, but is to put a traditional shaped, you know, large mailbox outside of City Hall that could be used for letters for Santa. The city in the past had done letters to Santa that were sent in. And as I'm thinking about it, if for some reason Winterfest wouldn't happen with COVID, it would still be something that we could do and promote as maybe the only thing that we could do if public events were limited, so that we would still have something. And if that was the case, then I just want to make sure that we're looking at funding for that and planning ahead, since it was on the original economic development list. The other couple of things, I was thinking about how we potentially try to COVID proof some of our businesses, so that when we go to have events, that they are still in fact in business. I was trying to think creatively, for example, with the farmers market, and the WBA has done joint business ventures before, is what it would look like to do some sort of market crate. So for example, you would sign up in advance. You would not necessarily be guaranteed content type, but you would be guaranteed content at a dollar value and weight. So for example, it could include depending on what you would select, maybe a bottle of wine with milk and honey, vegetables from a farm at market vendor that chooses to participate. It could be Wildwood based perhaps. There might be an option to do adding on a flower, since that's something that's sold by a Wildwood business organization. Perhaps a jar of sauce from Patterson Family Farms. And the pickup we could facilitate as a city. That could be something that maybe even we would have our farmers market manager to do. I was just looking at creative ways for people that felt like they could quarantine to still spend dollars in Wildwood, and the city could facilitate by perhaps offering a pickup location. So just an idea I wanted to float around. It probably could still use some development. it's similar to the idea of a CSA or community supported agriculture. I've done market crate boxes before, but those have all been outside the community. So this would be about making sure that we have continued sales with businesses that already exist, but also making sure that some of these vendors that we normally have year to year at the farmers market might still be there. But in any of those two options, either thinking creatively about businesses, or if anybody would like to comment on the mailbox, or now is the time to also share any of your business ideas that you'd like to see on the agenda. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Clark.
No problem. Yeah, I had an idea, but I don't know how this would work. But, you know, I've been to quite a few golf tournaments. Not that I'm a good golfer, because I'm the worst, but the Pujols have a golf tournament every year, even though they have moved away, but they still have their house here. But they, at the golf tournament, it's a charity event for the Pujols Foundation for people with Down syndrome. But they always have, throughout the golf tournament, I know others do too, I'm just saying Pujols because of Wildwood, but they have set up different vendors, like different places with food. You stop and you get a barbecue sandwich. The next place you stop and you get a smoothie. You stop and get all of these different things. Well, we've got so many different things in Wildwood. If we could have like the Wildwood business, the Wildwood food business, to be the suppliers for those. It is a charity, so it would be their donation for the year, but it brings so many people to that restaurant or pub or whatever has served something at that place. I can't tell you how popular some of these places have become because they served food at the Pujols golf tournament. So if there was, even if it's held somewhere else, if we had just the Wildwood group to serve a whole golf tournament, just an idea.
Okay, that might be something that we could include in an email to Emily with the WBA and Julian, and just see if there's any interest. And if there is, and the committee needs updated, then we can add that as an update in the future. Other additions? This is as collaborative as you want it to be. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no further comments, but since it was approved before, if we can find some money for that mailbox, I think that would be good to kind of get that done. We just didn't have, by the time Winterfest got on the books, there just wasn't an original allocation for some of that. So Councilmember Dodwell.
I was going to make a motion when you guys we were finished discussing that we do approve some funds for the mailbox at City Hall. I thought we had already found a mailbox or something that we could use. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I think if I remember right, Joe Vunich had found someone that was going to build one, but there were some concerns if it was made out of wood and durability, and then the cost was much higher. Even if we found one that was an older mailbox that could be painted industrially, that would be cheaper. I see Sam's got his hand up, and then I'll take Councilmember McKean after that. So Sam, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry to join you this late. Yeah, we did at the last minute find a little mailbox that we were able to put outside, but it wasn't.
It was a light up.
So,
it was a light up one, but not a functional one. You could
correct.
Open. It's about 3 feet tall.
I think you could put like 2 letters in it, and that was pretty much it. So,
yeah.
Yep. but no, I think we can explore. We purchased a payment drop box, as I mentioned in an earlier report, to council members, and I remember seeing a similar, sort of the U.S. Post Office, the big blue boxes that you would see on a corner. I think I remember seeing some of those that were there. So worst case scenario, we could, again, like Councilmember Eden suggested, we can find a used one somewhere and have somebody, one of our artists, put some decoration to it. I think it'd be good.
Mhm.
And thank you very much for that. We've got Councilmember McCune and then Councilmember Nyhan after that.
So I just want to piggyback on Sam's comment. The post office has removed a lot of their mailboxes and they've been condensing that. I wonder if we could reach out to the postmaster in Grover or Baldwin or local to see if they have a spare one that maybe we can buy or they donate, and then we can decorate a normal mailbox.
Yeah, we'll be happy to check into that.
I
Good
think
idea.
that might be something that we could always keep, and it's durable, it's weather proof, and I think that would be the way to go if it's available.
Councilmember Nyhan?
I think that's a great idea. Prior to hearing that, I know Eagle Scouts are often looking for projects that they can do, and they get the donations, and it's maybe someone from Wildwood and decorate it and do it and make it a part of the community that way. I don't know. That was just a thought.
Oh, that's great. And thinking ahead, I wanted to tell you guys that weren't on the committee last time is, and if you didn't attend Winterfest, we did have Santa there in person, and we did have a group of carolers there in person. If there would be some issue where children cannot go visit Santa because of social distancing, maybe what we need to plan ahead for just in the background is what it would look like to have Santa on Zoom. And maybe originally one of the things I had thought about but didn't really make sense once we were there in person because there were so many children, which is a great thing, would be reading a story to the kids, and then maybe trying to talk to them on Zoom. So there is a way to do it that doesn't change the budget. And Councilmember Dodwell.
I was just going to concur with you because we could set the kids up in the council chambers, and we've got those TV sets up there, and Santa could read the book through the TV set, or anybody who didn't feel comfortable coming could still participate via Zoom, but the other kids could potentially also see him if they were willing to come into City Hall. If we were even going to let them do that, though.
And Councilmember Clark, and we will put this certainly back on the agenda before we get to Winterfest. I just wanted to, as this budget is happening, I wanted to float some ideas out there so we can just make sure that we are planning ahead. Councilmember Clark.
I think that just talking about the Santa Claus just put a spark in my brain about having a signing Santa. There's very few places around St. Louis that have a Santa that signs. And if he's reading a book, having an interpreter there so that we do have some deaf young people who can't read the closed caption if we had that on there. So we would need somebody that, an interpreter to sign it, but that would be so good. I'm tutoring right now a little fourth grader from Wildwood who is deaf, and she would be thrilled along with all of the others, but it would be great if we could do that.
Well, that's a great idea. I certainly know that Santas are very hard to book, but we could always have an elf signer and a Mrs. Claus signer if we needed to, right there present. So, okay.
Well, Deaf Inc. always every year has a deaf a signing Santa that we might be able to get that same one if we wanted to check with Deaf Inc.
Okay, well, maybe let's noodle on some other ideas, and we'll put the holiday event in greater discussion back on the agenda as it gets closer. And if you want to noodle about maybe that market crate kind of idea, that would be good. And we also need to touch base again on as a committee our horse events. We tried very hard last year to make sure that we were going to start the process of including the horse community and at helping advertise the wonderful things that they have to offer, some of the private businesses, the private stables. We did have a tax swap that we're going to do. Cheryl and Missy helped greatly in organizing that. COVID happened instead. So maybe one of the things that we could do is if we do that tourism website or web page, maybe we can do a spotlight on the horse businesses as a vignette. But if there's interest in adding that as an item in the future, we certainly can. Councilmember Clark.
Do we have horse events in Wildwood? I'm not a horse person, so I don't know what all we have going on with horses other than people have them.
I think most of the events are specific to private stables and competitions. So I would love to go, watch a competition sometime if it was open to the public and I knew about it. But Councilmember Bertolino and then
Is Missy still on with John?
Without objection from the committee, I would like to allow Missy to speak if that's okay. All right.
So because of COVID, we just had an event, the Kirkwood Horse Show, which is like 50 years old. And it was held out in Washington at the stable where we board. However, it was a USDF, so that's a nationally rated show. We were not allowed to have spectators. And all the participants had to wear masks unless they were on the horse. So it was a very, competitions right now look very different during COVID versus non-COVID.
And Missy, are they videotaping any of them that we could ever show?
We have had some virtual showing. And so that's what I was actually doing when I got injured this summer, was being videoed to send that ride virtually to a judge. But some deer popped up and bucked and I broke 5 ribs and gave myself a concussion and deflated a lung. So I'm good now, but it was a rough summer. So the virtual showing is done at your leisure in that somebody tapes your ride and sends that in. So that's, it's a little hard to schedule visitors, if you will, to go watch that. So in Wildwood, I know there's tons of people who ride trails and do that. Ridgefield Stables, I think, has had some hunter jumper shows over at their place. And that's pretty much what I know in the Wildwood boundary, but there's certainly a lot going on in the area. We're going to have regionals in Lake St. Louis in October, which is huge for Region 4.
Oh, I wonder if that's an opportunity to advertise there or to take out an ad for Wildwood.
Possibly, actually. As I know more, I will let you know.
Please do, yeah. Julian?
I will add that in 2015, 2016, right before I came on board, the city had partnered with Queenie Park Equestrian Events. Missy ran the show to hold a tax swap and sale in the parking garage, which was the past version of the tax swap we were planning to hold this past year during COVID. So the city had hosted that event in partnership with Queenie Park in the past, which was our rationale to bring it back. Around the same time, we had also talked about potentially a fall fun ride, working on some of the equestrian trails out at Greensfeld, or maybe orchestrating some kind of a ride with a lot of the stables in town. So there had been some past events and definitely discussion about holding some in the future.
So maybe what we can do, let's put a pin in this, and I'll put it back on the agenda and prepare some more work and see if we can't, in the meantime, maybe reach out and organize something where we actually encourage a private business to videotape an event in its entirety and then find a way to showcase that through the WBA or on our website. So I think making businesses aware that we're interested might be a start. And then if we can find a way to maybe advertise at regionals, that would be interesting. So if there's no other comments, we'll move right along. Okay, Julian, with the Economic Development Manager's report, we've just got 2 for information items left and we'll be all done.
Yep, thank you, Chair Edens. As I mentioned to the committee at last month's meeting, we provide a monthly snapshot of our activities and business happenings in town during the past month. We provided the same report in July for a few months' time since that past meeting. So this report is just a snapshot of this past months of activity, just to show who's expanding, who's moving, who's opening, and some of the events and activities that we've been involved in over the past month. I'm happy to answer any questions about any specific item or go into detail in any of the points at the request of the committee.
Bueller? Okay, seeing no, oh, we got one. Councilmember Dodwell.
Sorry, I just wanted to again compliment Julian on putting together the little video series on each of the businesses that's getting posted up to our website, kind of rotating through some of our businesses and things. I think that's a great idea to help advertise them as we're going through these strange times. So thank you, Julian, for thinking.
Thanks, Ms. Dodwell. And I will jump onto that a little bit. The rationale for the small business spotlight video series came to us from an existing business owner, primarily in town, that expressed some I wouldn't call it frustration, but definite sadness on how businesses have reopened, but business hasn't come back yet. And that even though the county allowed businesses to reopen, it hasn't brought all the customers, all the clients, and all the revenue back in yet. So businesses are operating usually with restricted hours, less staff, and a lot less coming in the door. And so the request was to do what we can to educate the community a lot more about how, even though they've reopened, business still isn't back, and that it's still important to shop local and support local and try to help support your local business owners the best way we can. We had discussed with a woman that we contract with to offer social media programming, some kind of an interview series, and she recommended making it more of a do-it-yourself, behind-the-scenes video series that the business owners themselves are responsible for, where they host their own tour of their business, tell us what they do and why they do it, how they got to where they are, and how people can find out more about them, so that we can help out a little bit more on that educating, just to tell everybody in the community that business is open, but they need all the help they can get. And especially now with school resuming in some capacity, I think once people go back to school, they go back to their routine. We just need to make sure that people still continue to support local, because business is open, but it hasn't returned. And we need to do what we can to make sure everybody that's here stays here.
Which brings me to my next question on that particular topic is, if you go to the Wildwood website, great looking website, but it would be great if we are doing those kinds of videos, if we had some kind of very obvious link, either in the rolling activities bar that's going on in Wildwood, that states that we have this website. We want you to look at the businesses in Wildwood. We want you to participate in supporting them. I think we need to get a little bit more active in that. We're doing a lot with parks and activities for everyone, but if we could also share with the community the businesses that they may not even know exist here.
Thank you for that. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, Julian, do you want to update everybody on where we're at with the Lawn and Garden Summit? So just for the new folks, we planned an in-person event that was going to feature all of the wonderful lawn and garden businesses in Wildwood. We also had a huge list of partner organizations, everything from the Botanical Gardens to Mo Prairie Foundation, and we had lots of pre-registration, some excited folks, and not a shocker, COVID happened. So we'll tell you what we've explored to replace it with, Julian.
Thank you. Obviously, COVID is a moving target, and we've had to evolve our programming a little bit based off everything that's occurred in the last 6 months. As Chair Edens mentioned, we had a great event planned for March, and it was scheduled for, I believe the date was 3 days after the stay-at-home order was issued, when all the restrictions based off intentional gatherings were put into place. So we couldn't rightfully hold an event that we were expecting close to 1,000 people if we weren't allowed to have over 50 in one location. We shut everything down during COVID. I believe it was probably towards the end of June that in discussions with Chair Edens, we thought that there might be an appetite from those participating business owners, being the Zix Great Outdoors, Far Greenhouse, Papillion Perennials, Pasiglias, to, instead of holding an in-person event, rotate it and make it more of a virtual workshop, taking advantage of Zoom the same way we are today to offer the workshop virtually, where it could be recorded and rebroadcast on demand. And we offered that to the business owners, but they just were unable to participate, whether it was due to scheduling, just too much workload in the fall season, getting ready for fall gardening, or some business owners that are located on the periphery of Wildwood, inability to access a Zoom meeting. And so we didn't have the support enough to do a virtual workshop. And so since that point, we thought instead of having a virtual Zoom workshop for these speakers, we could make it a pre-recorded video series where each of those businesses, instead of being live on a Zoom screen, can at their own convenience, on their own schedule, record their own video of whatever their topic of choice is. And then we just stitch it together as a compilation so that it's still the same content, just pre-recorded. We put that out to the business owners, as you saw in the email that I attached to the introductory memo from, it looks like about 2 weeks ago, just introducing that idea of pre-recorded versus virtual. So far, we've gotten some interest. It hasn't been great. Zix Great Outdoors said they were interested, but we've gotten responses from the community college, the YMCA, and Papillion that said they cannot. So out of 8, there's 3 that said they can't. We do have the opportunity to still go forward with a smaller group. We can definitely engage the Watershed Erosion Task Force to be involved. We can engage the any kind of landscape architect to come on board if we'd like to fill some time. We haven't received a very favorable response yet, though. I'm not exactly optimistic that we'll be able to put together some kind of video series as intended. We wanted to give the committee an update of the happenings. It just right now seems like the business owners have other things going on, that this is not currently something that they can entertain. We'll definitely keep the committee updated, but we wanted to make sure that you all knew the current status.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? And certainly we did, I think, put out a notice not only with the first canceling, but to be rescheduled at a further date. So we can start working at any time to reschedule that original event in the spring. And then, of course, if we would get possible dates, ask for committee approval for that. Councilmember Dodwell.
I would recommend that we just move forward with preparing to do this again in the coming spring, hopefully. I think there are too many questions and the ability for some of those businesses to be able to put together a video themselves during a busy time of their season. I mean, I know in our original discussions, they specifically said, fall, we can't even think about doing anything. So as much as I would love to be able to do it this year, I say let's take what we had planned for this year and drop it into next March and see how successful. I think that'll be much as well attended, if not better, since we don't have the opportunity this year.
So what we can do is we'll have Sam and Julian maybe look at the calendar, and we'll get a date back for the committee for rescheduling.
Hopefully 2021 looks better than 2020.
It's a low bar. Okay, if there's no other comments, we can We have no items ready for action. Julian, do you have anything for other business news and updates?
Ma'am.
Okay, the next meeting date, September 22nd, will proceed again on Zoom. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Councilmember Giuliani, seconded by Councilmember Bertolino, non-debatable. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, well, thank you for such a good meeting, and I know it was a little bit longer, but I hope you realize we just added 2 really new interesting things to the work order. We just developed 2 programs tonight, so we did a lot of good work in the hour and a half that we spent together. So enjoy the rest of your evening. And if there's anything that you come up with, I love working with you guys, so feel free to send me your ideas and I'll work to help develop it for the agenda. Okay?
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Bye.